All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. So my colleagues and I are excited to speak with you about the housing reapplication process for the coming academic year. So we recognize that you all are studying away this year and what to expect when you're going through the reapp process, or even where you might be interested in living. All of these things, it might be a bit more challenging for you to navigate that, considering that you aren't currently with us at the New York campus. So we are going to talk you through the process, give an overview of some of our communities, and answer any questions that you all may have in an effort, again, to make the process run a bit more smoothly. So please, at any point, you can start dropping your questions in the Q&A box. We will be answering some as we can throughout the presentation, and again doing a live Q&A at the end with any questions that we aren't able to address through the Q&A box. So I'll start with introductions. My name is Christina Wankwo. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate director for residential life here at NYU's New York City campus.
Hi, good evening for some of you and good morning for some of you as well. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Thelma Cote. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an assistant director in housing services here at NYU, New York.
Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Paige Marie Gallagher. I am she, her pronouns, and I am a senior analyst here with Housing Services in New York as well.
Great. So you should have already received some communications in your NYU email that provide more detail about what reapplication looks like, reapplication and room selection for next year in the fall. So starting on Monday, February 12th, reapplication phase 1 will open. And so during that time, you interested in securing a housing assignment for next academic year, you'll submit the online application through NYU Home and submit a $1,000 housing reservation payment. Both of those things are due by March 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern. Both steps can be done at different times. So you can complete your application first and then pay later, but both of them have to be done by March 1st in order to maintain your renewable housing status. So what do we mean by, so phase 1, some important information there. You are all eligible to participate in phase 1, and we'll talk a little bit more about eligibility in a minute. But of note on priority, so everybody that goes through phase 1 is assigned a priority status based on their semesters remaining, not on the academic year. So for you are all in priority group 1. This applies to all eligible renewable students who are admitted to NYU as first years in fall 23 or spring 24. So that's something to note. Priority group 2 is all eligible renewable students who were admitted as first years in any other semester prior to fall 23 or spring 24. And then our priority group 3 folks are current undergraduate students in housing that were assigned via the wait list. And they might have joined us in fall 23 or this semester, spring 24. The deadline for accessible accommodations through the Moses Center, which some of you may have interacted with for your first year, the deadline to reapply for those accessible accommodations is also March 1st. So the phase 1 deadline and the accessible accommodations deadline are both March 1st, again, and that is for the academic year 24-25. Your accommodations do not roll over from academic year to academic year. So if you have any questions about reapplying for your accommodations, I recommend reaching out to the Moses Center. Oops. Paige Marie, I think you're still muted.
I apologize. While Housing is not mandatory in New York like it is for the study away sites. Students have the opportunity to live on campus all 4 years, so long as they meet the following criteria. You need to accept your initial housing offer at the time of your acceptance and your admissions, which for you guys is first year. You accepted it for your international sites, which is applicable to here. You need to meet all payment deadlines. As Thelma mentioned, you don't need to submit the payment at the same time that you submit the application, but it needs to be submitted in order for you to maintain eligibility. Similarly, you need to apply and meet all application deadlines and reapplication deadlines in order to maintain eligibility. You need to maintain satisfactory matriculation status. If you are no longer enrolled at NYU, you are unfortunately no longer eligible for housing with NYU. You also need to not have canceled for reasons outside of approved medical leaves and NYU study abroad programs. So unfortunately, you can't say, oh, I found somewhere off campus, I'd like to leave, I'd like to no longer be in NYU this semester, and then the next semester come back and say, I changed my mind, I'd like to come back. Unfortunately, canceling for any reason outside of medical leaves or study away programs disqualifies you for eligibility. And we typically have where all spring or previous year academic year students, if they are returning to the university and meet enrollment satisfaction, they are automatically enrolled and eligible for the next academic year. There are a few optional steps that you can take during your application. These are gender inclusive housing, themed engagement communities, and group registration. Gender inclusive housing means that you are opting to live with individuals that are not your legal sex. This does not mean that you identify as gender neutral or as anything besides your legal sex, but if you would like to live with individuals that are not your legal sex, you would need to opt into gender inclusive and gender neutral housing. Themed engagement communities are communities that you apply to be a part of, and Christina will talk a little bit about those later on. If you are accepted into a themed engagement community, or a tech as we call them, you will be removed from general selection and you will be assigned a space in that specific building within that community. The last is group registration. We allow students to create room selection groups of up to 6 people, in total, you and 5 others. And it's important to note that here all genders and gender neutral or legal sex need to match, and themed engagement communities need to match as well. So if you have 3 friends that you'd like to form a selection group with, if one opts into a tech community or one opts into gender neutral housing, then everyone in that group needs to opt in as well or apply for that tech community in order for the group to be verified.
So the themed engagement communities that Paige Marie mentioned are really great ways to connect with folks that have similar interests to yours. I think a good step forward in getting connected with the community out here at New York City. So as she shared, you have to apply. So there will be prompt questions where you will provide your response and explain to us why you would be a great fit for this community. So what do you plan to contribute? What experience do you have? What do you hope to gain from the community as well? So if you want to be seriously considered for one of these communities, we encourage you to take that essay portion seriously and really share why you're interested. And so these are examples of some of the communities that we have on campus this year. Each year, maybe a community or two may shift depending on what students tell us that they're interested in. So you can always visit our website for the most up-to-date themed engagement communities and what residence halls they're associated with. All of these communities are connected to a faculty member who will engage the group with outings around the city or even events in the residence hall specifically related to this topic. So it's a great way to get connected with faculty, explore New York City while connecting with other students that lived in your theme engagement community, and sharing some of these similar experiences. So apply, and we'd love to have you.
A little more about room selection, groups and registrations. Registered groups all receive the same time selection. So this really allows group members to select into specific spaces and into rooms at the same time, which allows, for the most part, people to select housing with individuals that they would like to live with, though that's not always the case. Grouping does not always necessarily guarantee placement together. I want to make that very clear. But this is kind of a benefit of creating a roommate group together. A room selection group priorities, as Thelma mentioned, you guys will most likely all be priority or group one, so you'll have similar priorities because we average them all together. If you have a selection group with individuals that are above you in the education process, older years, then their group 2 status, your group 1 status, they'll all be averaged together, and a new selection time will be created. As I previously mentioned, gender assignment preference, meaning whether you're opting into gender inclusive housing or not, and themed engagement communities need to match in order for roommate groups to be verified, and group leaders need to be the ones that verify the groups. Once that's done, you'll get a notification from us and your group will be saying that your group is verified. If you don't receive that, there's most likely one of those two reasons. Either someone has opted into or applied for a tech community, or gender assignment preferences don't match. And in those cases, everyone would need to go back, look at their application, and either opt into gender neutral housing or apply for a tech, if that's the option, and that's the direction that you'd like to go in order to maintain your selection group.
Great, thank you all. So in phase 2, which means that you've completed everything meaning the 2 steps in phase 1, you completed the application and submitted your housing reservation payment, you're eligible to go on and participate in phase 2. So general room selection will occur between April 15th and April 19th. An important note is that if you are accepted into a themed engagement community, tech selection is April 8th to the 11th. There are specific spaces reserved for those communities in the halls mentioned in this presentation. So you'll be able to select from those spaces. If you do not select during your tech selection time slot, you will be administratively assigned prior to general room selection. You'll receive your selection time beginning on March 27th. And at that time, room preview will also be available. Room preview is the opportunity for you to actually go into the housing portal and kind of click around and get used to the feel of, looking for certain room types or buildings without actually selecting a space. That doesn't guarantee that you'll see those spaces at your selection time, but at least you can get a feel for looking for a space or looking around at what rooms are available beginning on March 27th. And then that will close on April 5th in advance of themed engagement selection. So selection times are generated randomly based on your group's priority, as Paige Marie mentioned. The group leader, should you choose to join a group, has the ability to select and assign all members of the group. You can reject your group leader's assignment if you wish, but if you are unable to select a space that during your selection time, you will still be administratively assigned during phase 3, which will occur during the summer. The important thing to note here too is that you're still guaranteed an assignment for the fall if you choose not to select or are not able to select during phase 3. There is historically more students who are eligible than we have space, but we do guarantee an assignment in university housing for those who complete phase 1.
So this is the list of halls that you will see when you go into the system to select a space. So these are our upper year halls. So anywhere from students who are sophomores to seniors living in these various buildings. As it notes, this is subject to change, but generally this is the list that you'll see. And so we have YouTube videos that show room tours in all of these halls on our website. We also have the floor plans available, so you can preview those before you go through the selection process to get an idea of the rooms, layouts, and things like that. We have information on amenities and things that are available in each of the buildings. So you want to make sure you become familiar with what your options are before you or your group actually begin going through the selection process and your time slot comes up. So we're biased, right? But we think living on campus is a really great idea. And so here's just a list of a few of the benefits that we've thought about as to why we think it's a great idea for students to live on campus and to continue living on campus. It's really easy to stay connected to the greater campus community. All of our halls are within about a 15-20 minute walk from Washington Square. And of course, there's access to public transportation near all of our halls. So getting to class, getting to your club and organization meetings, dining halls, all of those things are super simple because you'll be very connected if you're living on campus. So we have campus safety officers posted at the entrance of every residence hall 24/7, 365 days a year. So there's always someone available from campus safety and our housing staff to help students if a situation or a concern arises or just to answer a general question, which is pretty awesome. We manage and maintain our own facilities. So our work order system is pretty great. Generally, our facilities managers respond within 24 hours of any sort of work request when students are having problems in their room, which is really awesome. Of course, we have internet. You have a mail room in your building, so all of your mail and packages will come directly to your residence hall. You just go downstairs and pick them up, which is pretty convenient. We offer laundry in every building, $1 to wash, $1 to dry, which if you've ever gone to a laundromat in New York City, those are pretty good prices. And it's super convenient because you just have to go down a few floors in your building with your laundry rather than going outside and walking however many blocks with your things. And the amenities, like I shared, they vary from building to building. So it's good to look at our website to get an idea of what's offered where, if that is something that's a big concern for you when deciding which residence hall to select. And we have a lot of live-in professional staff member. I am one of those people. I live in a residence hall and I'm there to support students to help them out if they have any questions or anything that comes up. There's also faculty members that live in each building that will plan events alongside our resident assistants. So there's always something to do in the building. There's always someone to connect with. And so as you're trying to decide with your options for selection, especially if you're working with a group, again, I encourage you to do your research and then maybe come up with a list of priorities or preferences with your group so that you have an idea, you know, okay, we want this building first. If this one isn't available, you can quickly go to the next building that's on your list of preferences to try and identify a space for yourself or a space for your group. But you can't go wrong with living on campus. Again, biased opinion, but live with us. So next steps, start talking with any potential roommates or suite mates. So those groups that we keep referring to, if you have people in mind, start communicating with them. Visit our website, look around, become familiar with the dates and deadlines. But again, become familiar with the residence halls that are available, so you're able to make an informed decision when it's your time to go through the selection process. Make sure you meet that March 1 deadline. That is the most important thing, as Thelma shared. As long as you complete phase 1, we will make sure that we are able to accommodate your housing request based on all of the stipulations that Paige and Thelma has shared. So that's a really important date to lock in your calendar if you haven't already. Contact our office. There'll be contact information that pops up soon. If you have any questions that are really specific to your circumstances, or a question that comes to your mind after this webinar is wrapped up, you can reach out to us via email. Give us a call at the phone number that's on the screen. And we have staff in the office Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will be available to help you out and maybe point you in the right direction. If you aren't sure, you can feel free to scan the QR code on the screen. It'll take you right to our website where, again, all of this information is posted so that you have access to it. And another housekeeping note, so this webinar is being recorded and it will be emailed to your group for you to refer back to in the event that you missed the beginning, or maybe you have friends that weren't able to make it. So that is all for the scripted part of things. Now I guess we can jump into some questions.
Yeah, and if folks have questions, they can feel free to use the Q&A box. We have some in there right now. So one is, can we room with an incoming freshman student, class of 2028? So re-app and room selection, as you've seen the available halls, those are upper year halls. So unfortunately, you aren't able to make a room selection group with an incoming first year. They have a different dedicated set of halls and communities. But you are able to create a roommate group with any upper year that is eligible for phase 1. So I hope that that helps clarify the room selection groups in reapplication. The next question that I see, will the meal plan be included in the housing fee? Meal plans are a separate fee, and NYU Dining manages their meal plan selections. All right, and then if we receive housing for the fall, are we guaranteed that same housing for the spring? So yes, the completing phase 1 is you are essentially signing a 9-month lease for on-campus housing. If you select into, let me go back to the slide. Excuse me. So some of the these are the halls that you'll be able to select from in phase 2. You'll see that Third North has a tower designated for spring reassignment required. So those students who select into that space will be required to move into a new spring assignment. So at that time, in the fall semester, we will gather spring reassignment preferences from that group. But that's the only assignment option where you would have a different spring assignment from your fall one, but you will still have an assignment for both semesters.
Thelma, I can take the next one. How do bathrooms work in each hall? Do any of them have en suite? So the bathrooms across the halls are pretty standard, I'd say. Most have a bathtub and a shower. We do have a few buildings where there's only a shower available for folks to use. So all of our upper year halls are apartment style. So the vast majority of them, there will be 2 to potentially 4 or 5 bedrooms. Where students share the rooms, and then there are bathrooms within each apartment. So if you're in a 2 bedroom apartment, it's likely there will be one bathroom that the students living in that apartment would share with each other.
You guys belong in priority group 1.
Awesome.
All right, so if let me see. So if you are creating or are living with a roommate in the fall, and they decide to study away in the spring, you are still committed to an on-campus housing assignment for the full academic year. Your roommate is technically canceling their housing license, but it's for an allowable reason. So they will receive separate communication about checking out of the residence hall in the fall if they are studying away in the spring. Adrienne, do you want to take the next question?
Yep. During phase 1, do you select building preferences, or does that happen with room selection in phase 2? So during phase 1 application, you can put preferences, but phase 2 is where you will actually select. So the preferences are in case you fall into that phase 3 administrative assigned category. For the phase 1 application, are we ranking different residence halls, or do we apply for one hall? If you are applying for a tech community, you apply more often than not for one specific tech, unless you'd like to be considered for more than one. Otherwise, you're ranking preference for where you'd like to live.
Then how can you tell which rooms are singles or doubles in the floor plans? So the floor plans are not designated with the room type. You can use room preview, which becomes available on March 27th, again, to kind of look through the housing portal in advance of room selection. And those, the rooms will be designated as double, single, triple, but you won't be able to see that on the floor plans themselves. They're just meant to give you an idea of how many rooms are in a suite, how many bathrooms are in the suite, that sort of thing.
If I can answer this one, Thelma.
Okay.
If you choose to be in a group, does that mean you are sharing your apartment with those people in that group, or does a group mean something else? If you create a room selection group, you are not obligated to live in that in a room with those individuals, though most people that form selection groups do so because they would like to live with those individuals. You can have a selection group and select into different rooms during your selection time, but it's not mandatory, and a lot of individuals opt into roommate groups because they'd like to live with those specific people.
All right, so what is the latest you can change the group that you are a part of? The deadline to verify your roommate group, your room selection group, is March 1st. And that is so that our office can generate behind the scenes, averaging all the priorities and randomly assigning within that priority your room selection group time, which again will be released on March 27th. Should you decide to leave the group after it is verified, you will still receive your group selection time. And again, if you're in a group, it'll all be the same. You'll all receive the same time slot. You have no obligation to remain in that group. It is simply just the room selection time that you are assigned at that point. So you can select separately from the members of your group as well.
If my roommate leaves to study abroad in the spring, will be assigned a new roommate? Yes, indeed, you will. You'll typically be assigned someone who has requested a room change, who is coming back from their own study abroad, or a transfer student as a returning undergraduate. If you have a housing group of 2, are the apartments for only 2 people you can select, or will you have to pick bigger apartments and join other random roommates? If you have a roommate group of 2, you can try to select into a room that is a double studio or just 2 individuals. If not, you select your room and other random individuals will be able to select into that as well, so long as the preferences of each match.
And just to reiterate, should you choose to join a group, we're talking a lot about room selection groups, but you're also free to select as an individual and not join a group at all. Mm-hmm. That's always a thing. So the group leader, if you have one, has the ability to select for you as a member of that group. But you also, as a group member, have the ability to reject that space and select on your own if you want. The group leader also has the option to not assign you either. So yeah, those are your options if you join a group, and if you select as an individual, essentially. The group leader really doesn't have any other responsibilities than you do. If you are not the group leader, that helps.
So Thelma or Paige Marie, if a student goes through the process, but they don't end up in the room or the residence hall that they would like to, will there be an opportunity for students to apply for room changes, or what are their options?
Totally, yeah, thank you. So if you are unhappy with your selection, after phase 2 concludes, we will open the post-selection room change form, and you can submit that as soon as selection is over. We'll review those room change requests throughout the summer, and if we are able to reassign you based on those preferences, we will just reassign you at that point. It's not really like an offer, would you like to remain in your selected space or take this one? So if you do fill out that post-selection room change form, just be sure that it's as specific to what you want as possible, knowing that, again, I think the more specific that you are, that's helpful for you, right? Because you know you want a double in Gramercy, but that also narrows down the inventory for us. So balancing the two, balancing what you got versus what realistically we might have available, that if and when you fill that out, just keep that in mind. During the academic year, the room change form will also remain open, and the bed for bed exchange form will open during the academic year. If changing your room after you've moved in becomes something that you're interested in, and you'll receive more information about the bed for bed during the summer and when the fall semester starts. But there's also information on our website about the bed for bed forum, as well as the room change form options post-selection.
If you would only like to live with one other person, you and your best friend want to live by yourselves, have your own bathroom, have your own everything. Yes, that is indeed what we refer to as a double studio. That means that only two people are in that suite, and it is not a shared suite. So it would just be the two of you in that, correct? We also have double in units, which means there are two people living in a bedroom that also has other people in that unit as well. As Thelma mentioned before, you could have suites that are multiple rooms where you share that common space, but you and your specific roommate will only live in one room. It'll just be the two of you, though you would share the kitchen, if there is one, the bathroom, and the common areas.
So Paige Marie or Thelma, just to give students like a realistic idea of their options, like what's like a ballpark of how many students will end up in, let's say, like a single or in one of these double studios where they only share a bathroom with their best friend? What's the likelihood that they would end up in one of those types of spaces?
Do you want me to? Yeah.
Sure,
So
yeah, do you want me to?
that's fine. So single occupancy rooms make up around 2 to 3% of our total inventory, and that's across Brooklyn and Manhattan. So the chances of you getting at least suite mates is 97%. If a so a double studio or a single in unit, single studio, those are what we call lower occupancy rooms. If you believe that you have a medical reason to be assigned to one of those lower occupancy room types, I highly suggest initiating the accessible accommodation process and requesting that from the Moses Center, just because obviously the demand for lower occupancy spaces will exceed our supply of them. And we do prioritize students with approved accessible accommodations for the types of accommodations that they're approved for. So that it's sort of the picture of a private space versus a shared space. There's a 97% chance that you'll be assigned to some sort of shared living community. Check the chat. So lower cost, so these two questions are a little similar. Do housing prices depend on the number of people you share a room with or the number of people in your suite? And what is the difference between a low cost double and normal doubles? So we posted our rates on the website, and there's a designation and a rate for a lower cost double, lower cost triple. So the lower cost room types typically either have a ventilation gap. So what that means is one of the walls in the room does not go all the way up towards the ceiling. So there's a hole, I guess, in that room, and so those are often designated as lower cost. The existence of a bunk set in a room also typically makes it lower cost, as well as the bunk set. So there could, like, a lower cost triple. Wait, sorry, there's another one that I was thinking of. A lower cost double can also mean that it is like a pass-through room to another bedroom. So the bedroom shares like a little bit of the common area in an apartment, that there's no separation really between, it's like the studio part of a unit. So those are typically what makes our lower cost, the characteristics of our lower cost spaces.
Can two students apply as a group for Lafayette and 2nd Street, and then also apply for options individually? So if you're forming a room selection group, you can really put anything that you'd like as your ranking for your individual preferences. Those don't need to match up specifically. If you're in a group, you can decide, hey, we didn't get Lafayette or Second Street. I'm gonna actually try to get one in Weinstein if you want to try to get one in Greenwich Hall. That's completely acceptable. You don't need to have the housing preferences in your application match, just the gender inclusive and the tech communities. You don't necessarily need to apply for low cost. It's an option that you mark when you do your application. There's no eligibility in regards of financial aid or with the bursar or anyone in order to ask to be placed into a low cost. So that's not a concern. As long as you note it on your application, we will do our very, very best to make sure that you get into a lower cost option.
So in the housing portal, when you're ready to make selection, you'll see the floor plan of each room, or I'm sorry, each suite. And so if a suite has more than one room, then and you're selecting a double, so that's a double in unit. If you're looking at the portal and it's just one room and you're selecting into a double, that would be a double studio. So it's not necessarily indicated on the floor plan so much as what you see on the portal when you select into that space. And just to expand a little bit on the lower cost doubles and typical doubles or regular standard cost doubles in a suite, there can be a combination of lower cost and regular cost in the same suite, depending on the characteristics. Again, so like it could be a lower cost double in unit because that room is the pass-through room, and then the other double in that unit is the regular standard cost because it has the door, it has the beds are contained in one room. So there, in that situation, there would be standard cost double and then the lower cost double in the same suite. And then there are, most of our suites are, I would say 4 to 5 people in a suite, but we have suite options that can go up to 12 people per unit. And again, as low as 2 or 1 person per unit, that being a little more, a little bit fewer in our inventory, I should say.
Any last minute questions that folks want to throw into the chat before we wrap up? Another clarifying question about groups.
So remember, groups are selection time groups. So it's just about selecting at the same time as these people, but not necessarily having to apply or choose the same option as everyone else in your group. So if you form a group with people you'd like to live with and then decide that, oh, never mind, I'd like to live in Third North, or I'd like to live in Broome instead, where my group would like to live in Coral, that is completely fine. You'll still maintain that group and selection time with them, but that doesn't mean you have to choose the same options as them or same room as them.
And that's why I think all 3 of us, I feel like, would encourage you to, if you're thinking of creating a room selection group, to communicate about what that means for everybody. If your expectation is that your group leader is assigning you, that would be important for the group leader to know. And then if that's the case, letting them know what your preferences are. Knowing that you'll all have access to the portal at the same time, but again, like they might have, you might have class during your selection time, but your group leader won't. It's important that all members, I think, of the group, the room selection group, are on the same page about each other's preferences, because there might be scenarios where yeah, you're selecting individually, or somebody's making the selection for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize, when we say application, you're not specifically applying for that building, you're going to select into that building. So while you put your preferences, if you end up being part of the phase 3 in your application, you don't only need to essentially apply for one or pick one right off the bat. You can kind of decide as you go and depend on what the availability is, but you're not locked in to one option. If you put that as ranked first or second or third, those are just for us if you end up being part of phase 3, so we know where you would like and where you would prefer to live. But again, you're not applying for one specific building when you apply for housing, because you're going to select into the rooms that you'd like.
Okay, and so I can take this last question. So we're asked to describe each available hall in one word. So first of all, that would be tough. Um, I think what is most important is you all are searching our website and checking out the available halls, is to think about your needs. And again, back to this group conversation, if you want to live with certain people, their needs as well. Cost probably being number one for most folks. If you're really adamant about a themed engagement community, a specific topic, looking at the amenities that are available, the styles of the suites that are available. So really each hall has its own personality, but you need to focus in on like what's most important for you, because depending on your selection time, right, someone has to be number one, someone will be number what, 2003, right? And so that's just a reality of the process. So really having an idea of what's important to you, and what are some things that you can compromise on, to make sure that you secure a living space that you believe will be best for you next year, should be your priority.
Yeah, and each hall, for the most part, has their own Instagram or some sort, like a Twitter or whatever it's called now.
Instagram.
And yeah, no, yeah, but and also our NYU housing Instagram will post like a NYU cribs of a various number of room types and halls that are in our inventory. So feel free to check that out as well.
Awesome. So you all have our contact information. We will stop the recording at this time.